I'm Miško Hevery. I'm a CTO of Builder.io. To find a good starting point, then it just flows. Startup performance is very important for websites because it translates into conversion rates. If a website is slow, it takes forever for the user to be able to click on a button. They'll simply leave before they can perform the action they came here to do. There's a lot of evidence that actually shows that this is the case. If you notice, Google has been collecting it and sharing it on their dev tools, basically showing just how much money is left on the table because sites are slow. And because it's so important, Google actually cares about it so much, they build Google PageSpeed, which includes the Chrome Core Web Vitals, which collects the actual performance from the wild, as well as the light speed scores, which try to predict what your site will perform like in the wild. And so all of that is done because when sites are fast, the user wins, and that's what we want in the end. So we have an internet full of sites and examples that show that we are having trouble as an industry to get fast websites. And it's funny because a lot of times the developers get blamed for it. People just assume that if you can't get your site fast enough, it was fault of the developer. But it turns out that if that would be the case, then you should see at least some websites that have good performance. And while there are certainly sites that have good performance that are kind of a hello world sites, if you get into an actual production website, I'm not aware of anyone who has actually a good performance that are actually in the green in terms of Core Web Vitals. And so oftentimes we blame the developers, but it turns out the developers don't actually have a choice. On one side, they have to include third-party scripts because their business demands it. And on the other, they're using a framework that forces a particular mental model and particular loading strategy. And so between those two choices, they end up in the world that we are today. And we just need a different kind of tools for dealing with these problems. So when you navigate to a website, you notice that a user cannot possibly use every single feature of the website all at once. Yet the way our systems are designed, we are forcing them to download all of the code all at once and execute it because hydration requires it. So I think we're at a point in time where the industry's best practices are just not good enough for dealing with the problems that we have at hand. And I think the current set of hydration approaches aren't scaling very well for the future. So in the future, the answer isn't to have less JavaScript in the form of that writing smaller application. The applications will only get larger and the amount of JavaScript in those applications will get bigger. But rather having clever strategies so that we don't have to download all of the code at once. So going from a hydration paradigm to really resumable paradigm is kind of the next step of the evolution for the industry. So for a good performant website, you need to have as little JavaScript as possible. But for a nice interactive website, you obviously end up having a lot of JavaScript. So what gives? We have had tools such as AMD and CommonJS and module systems that basically made it super easy to include more and more capabilities. And there is a lot of libraries out there that all provide solutions to any problem you might have. But all these libraries come at a cost of just adding more and more code. And a bundling system really has no choice but to include everything together into one huge chunk. And it is very difficult, if not impossible, to create lazy loaded boundaries, because as long as the component is visible on a page, lazy loading in the current systems is not possible. The other part of the puzzle is taking your third-party code and moving it into web workers. Now, web workers don't have DOM API, and so your third-party code won't run there. But if you use something like Partytown that emulates the DOM APIs inside of the web worker, you can actually move most of your third-party code there, which further aids in unloading the amount of work that the main thread has to do. So what kind of resumable frameworks are there? So Google has had one for the past almost a decade. It powers Google Search, and Google Photos, and Gmail. And one thing you can say about all these products is they're extremely fast. Especially for search and photos, it is hard to get to the situation where the system isn't ready for your input. And so I think resumability is the future. So what are the options in the open source world? Well, the eBay is working on something called Markov version 6 that hopefully is going to be available soon. And of course, Quick and Builder.io is working hard on Quick. And Quick is already available today. It's currently in beta. And the whole point of Quick is figuring out how not to download all the code at once and not to overwhelm the browser. All resumable frameworks basically have that goal of making sure that the browser doesn't get overwhelmed. And it's really that simple. If you're interested in finding out more about our work, check us out on Builder.io. We have 3 cool open source projects. Quick, QWIK, which talks about the resumability, Party Town, which talks about moving your third-party code over to the web worker. And we also have Mitosis, which allows you to write your components once and make them available natively in all the platforms. Thanks for spending your time with us. My name is Miško. You can find me on Twitter at Hevery. You can find Quick Project at QWIKDev on Twitter, and you can find Builder.io as well.